The 9 months pregnant Queen Zuri loved sitting by the river. The water was calm and peaceful to look at. The air was cool, and the sound of the river made her feel at peace. As she was about to head back to the palace, she felt a sharp pain. Her heart jumped. She held her stomach and cried out, "Oh no! The baby is coming," she screamed, hoping someone would hear her and come help her. "Ah!" she screamed, but no one came. She was all alone, and the pain got worse. It was so strong that she could barely move. She fell to the ground, clutching her belly, crying and groaning there by the river. Suddenly, she saw a strange figure swimming towards her, but she was already too weak and in great pain to even care. Queen Zuri gave birth to the baby with the help of the strange being. It was a really difficult birth, and the pain was unbearable, but she did it. Finally, the baby came out. She gasped for air, weak but relieved. She looked down at her child and was immediately frozen in shock, her eyes wide open and mouth agape. A mermaid was cradling her baby, and not just that, the baby was completely white like snow. Queen Zuri could not believe it. She stared at the baby and the mermaid, her mind racing. "How is this possible?" she whispered. She was dark-skinned. The king was dark-skinned. How could she have a white baby? Also, they all knew mermaids did not exist, so how was it possible she was looking at one? She concluded she must be imagining things, but at that moment, the mermaid spoke up. "Hello," she said. "I'm Queen Nala. I rule the water world." Queen Nala went ahead to explain to Queen Zuri that her baby was white because he was born through water magic, as Queen Zuri would have definitely died if Nala had not intervened. Fear grabbed Zuri's heart. "The king will never believe me," she thought. "He will think I cheated on him." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she held her baby close. "What will I do? What will I say?" The king, King Asha, was a proud, arrogant, and angry man. People feared him, and no one dared to question him, not even the closest woman to his heart, Queen Zuri. If the king thought she had betrayed him, he would punish her. He might even end her life, and he would never accept this child. Her hands shook as she looked at the baby. "I cannot take you to the palace," she whispered, her voice breaking with sadness. "The king will not let you live. I have no choice." With a heavy heart and a tight chest, Queen Zuri begged Nala to take the child with her and raise him as her own and forget this whole situation. She promised Queen Nala that she would never come for the child, so she should never tell him about her when he is grown. Queen Nala happily agreed to this arrangement, as she also wanted a son, since she only had a daughter. She happily swam away slowly with the young prince. "I am sorry," Queen Zuri said, her voice shaking. "I am so sorry." Tears streamed down her face as she watched them swim away. But she could not stay there. She had to act quickly. She couldn't return with no pregnancy and no baby. So she wiped her tears and snuck to the childcare center in the far corner of the kingdom. At the nursery, an old woman greeted her. "Please," Queen Zuri begged, "I need a baby. I will pay you anything, but you must promise never to tell anyone I was here." The old woman looked at her with kind eyes and handed her a baby boy whose single mother had died during childbirth. He was healthy, dark-skinned, and perfect. Queen Zuri held the baby close, sighed with relief, and quickly left after thanking the old woman profusely. When Queen Zuri returned to the palace with the baby, there was celebration everywhere. The servants clapped and cheered, the people sang songs, the king smiled proudly, everyone was happy. They named the baby Ayani, Queen. Zuri, however, was not pleased. As a loving mother would, she cradled the baby and smiled for the crowd, but her heart ached because she kept thinking of the baby she had abandoned in the river. For the moment, her secret was safe, but secrets are never truly kept that way. She had a strong belief that everything will change when this secret was revealed. As Queen Nala swam down to her underwater kingdom with the little prince, the baby began to choke. His little body shook and his face turned pale. Queen Nala suddenly remembered that humans cannot breathe underwater. She leaned down and gave the baby a magical kiss on his forehead. The little prince gasped and took a deep breath. He stopped, choking, and started breathing underwater. His tiny legs shimmered and turned into a shiny silver tail. The baby had transformed into a mermaid. Queen Nala smiled. "You are one of us now," she said gently. When she brought the baby to her kingdom, all the mermaids gathered around to see him. They had never seen anyone like him before. His skin was completely white, glowing softly in the water. Queen Nala held the baby close. "I will name him Prince Jamar," she said proudly. The mermaids all nodded, and the name spread quickly through the kingdom. Queen Nala had a daughter named Princess Kai. She was kind, playful, and loved taking care of others. When she saw Prince Jamar, she smiled brightly. She loved him at once, as if he were her little brother. She stayed by his side, playing with him and keeping him safe. As time passed, odd things began to happen. The mermaid kingdom began to alter. The coral reefs, which had been deteriorating, suddenly became vibrant and beautiful. The submerged vegetation became higher and greener. The water glittered like never before. The entire realm seemed alive and full of energy. The mermaids noticed the change. "Everything is growing so beautifully," they said. "It must be because of Prince Jamar," another added. Queen Nala watched her kingdom in awe. "This has never happened before," she said. "Prince Jamar is special." As Prince Jamar grew older, he astounded everyone. He absorbed information rapidly and was always eager to learn more. The mermaids taught him how to swim like lightning, speak their language, and protect the kingdom. He quickly rose to the top of the group's fighting abilities. He moved through the water like a warrior, swiftly and fearlessly. "Look at him!" the mermaids would exclaim. "He is a true prince." Everyone liked him, even though he was the only boy in the realm. They saw him as their guardian and a source of hope for the future. Princess Kai treated him like a brother, and the two became inseparable. For 16 years, King Asha lived blissfully, believing Prince Ayani was his true son. He adored him as a loving parent, but the boy was pompous, exactly like his father. Queen Zuri was also relieved that her major secret had been kept hidden, and no one had ever suspected the truth. Life in the palace appeared serene, but King Asha had one wish that never came true. He desired another child, but Queen Zuri never became pregnant again. One evening, as the sun fell, Queen Zuri noticed the king sitting alone in the courtyard. His face was serious, and he looked deep in thought. She walked over to him and said softly, "My king, why do you look so troubled?" His eyes narrowed, and he responded firmly, "I am waiting for someone." Queen Zuri lowered her head. "Yes, my king," she said quietly, as she knew better than to ask more questions. The king did not like to be questioned, even by her, but inside she was scared, as she kept on pondering about who the king could possibly be waiting for. Queen Zuri suddenly thought about the child she left in the river, and her chest tightened. For years, she had tried to forget about the baby she had abandoned, but now her past was catching up with her. Meanwhile, Prince Ayani lived his life, with a strict and arrogant father. The people of the kingdom didn't like him, because he also had his father's pride and arrogance. One night, Queen Zuri sat alone in her room. The palace was quiet, but her thoughts were loud. She remembered the day at the river, the baby's cries, the way the mermaid carried him away. She wondered how he was doing, and if he was even alive. And then the most terrifying thought came to her. What if he is the one the king is waiting for? Her heart felt heavy with fear and guilt. She had made the hardest decision to protect herself, but now it felt like her past was coming back to destroy her. King Asha could not sleep. He walked up and down in his chambers, thinking hard. The thought of what he was expecting troubled him. The king had been reading the old scrolls about their kingdom's history and discovered that every 100 years a special child was born. This child was not like other children. The child was sent by the gods and born with pure white skin. This child was a gift, bringing strength and good fortune to the kingdom. When the child was in the kingdom, no enemies dared to attack, and the people lived in harmony. These were the best times in the kingdom's history. The scrolls said this child always came every 100 years, but now the king was confused and worried, as it had been 100 years since the last child, and he was supposed to come in his reign. Yet, he had not seen this special gift. If you've been enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like and subscribe for more thrilling tales. Now let's dive back into the story, shall we? King Asha decided to seek answers. He called for the chief priest, the wisest man in the kingdom, to help him. The chief priest quickly arrived. His face was calm, but his presence carried great power. The priest lit some herbs and began chanting. His voice was deep and steady. The smoke from the burning herbs filled the room, and the air grew thick with tension. The king watched closely, his heart pounding with hope and fear. Finally, the chief priest stopped. He opened his eyes and spoke. "Your Majesty," he said, "the child has been born." The king frowned in confusion. "What do you mean the child has been born?" he asked. "We have not seen any such child." The chief priest nodded. "The gods have spoken clearly. The special child has been born." The king's anger boiled over. His mind raced with thoughts. "Who has taken what is mine?" he shouted. "Who dares to keep this child from me?" The priest stood silent, letting the king's anger settle. "The gods have given their gift, but now it is up to you to find him," he said. Meanwhile, Queen Zuri had overheard the king's conversation with the chief priest. She was trembling and felt the walls of her life's secret closing in on her. King Asha, heavy with anger and suspicion, called for his wife, Queen Zuri. She entered the royal chambers, her heart racing with fear. She could see the anger in the king's eyes, and her legs felt weak. "Sit down," the king commanded, his voice cold and sharp. Queen Zuri sat slowly. Her hands trembled as she folded them in her lap. The king's gaze was hard and piercing. "Tell me," he began, his voice low and steady, "was the baby you gave birth to completely white?" Queen Zuri hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes, my king," she said softly. But the king could not bring himself to believe her. "Queen..." Zuri's hands shook, her voice wavered, and her eyes refused to meet his. "You have to be lying," he said, his voice growing louder. "I'm not, my king," Queen Zuri said, her voice barely above a whisper. The king's patience snapped. He slammed his hand on the table and roared, "Speak up! Tell me the truth!" Queen Zuri jumped in fear, her heart pounding. She could no longer hold back. Tears streamed down her face as she began to confess. She told the king everything, how she had given birth to a white-skinned baby, how she feared he would not accept the child, and how she had given him to a mermaid. The king listened, his face growing darker with every word. His anger was like a storm ready to explode. "You abandoned the gift of the gods," he shouted, his voice shaking the walls. "You betrayed me and this kingdom." The chief priest, who was standing nearby, stepped forward carefully. "Your Majesty," he said in a calm voice, "what the Queen did was very wrong, but please do not act in extreme anger. She did this out of fear. Of you. Not just her, the entire kingdom fears your wrath. But this does not excuse her actions." The king cut him off with a roar and told him that if he uttered one more word, he would face the same punishment as Queen Zuri. The chief priest stepped back, his head bowed. He did not dare to speak again. The king ordered his guards to prepare a search party. They went to the river where Queen Zuri had given up the child 16 years ago. The water was calm, and the area was quiet. They searched for hours, but there was no sign of the child. The chief priest closed his eyes, trying to sense the child's presence. "He is not dead, Your Majesty," the priest said finally. "I can feel his spirit. It is strong. He must still be alive, living among the mermaids." The king's fists clenched. He turned and stormed back to the palace with his guards, anger boiling in his chest. When they arrived, the king ordered for Queen Zuri to be locked in the palace dungeons until he decides her fate. The queen was dragged away, tears streaming down her face. She had lived with the secret for 16 years, but now it had all come crashing down. The king also put Prince Ayani with his mother in the prison. People in the palace were confused because it wasn't the prince's fault, but nobody dared to say anything, as they already knew him as a heartless king. King Asha angrily called on his personal advisors to discuss further plans. The advisors entered the room slowly, with fear clearly on their faces, as they all knew the king's temper. They had to choose their words carefully, because no matter what they said, the king always did what he wanted. The king insisted he would go to war with the mermaids for keeping his son from him. One of the advisors, trying to stay calm, spoke softly. "Your Majesty," he said, "please think about this. The mermaids saved the child. Without them, he would have been lost forever. Maybe we can ask them peacefully to return him." The king's eyes narrowed, but he nodded slowly. He grabbed a scroll and began to angrily write a very threatening letter, which he read out loud after he was done for his advisors. But one of the advisors stepped forward and nervously pointed out to the king that the letter sounded harsh and demeaning. But the arrogant King Asha slammed his fist on the table, questioning his advisor as to the audacity he had to question his decisions. He stated that he was king and his decisions are law. After that, none of his advisors spoke up anymore, and they just went along with whatever he suggested. King Asha rolled up his letter and gave it to his messenger. "Take it to the river and deliver it to the mermaids." When the messenger reached the river, he pulled out a small whistle which the chief priest had given him for this assignment. He blew into it, and a soft, clear sound echoed over the water. A ripple with a glow in the middle also formed, and he threw the bottle into the river and hurried away. After the messenger left, one of the mermaids swimming nearby picked up the bottle and took it to Queen Nala. The mermaid swam quickly to their kingdom under the water. She entered the royal palace and handed the bottle to their queen, Queen Nala. Queen Nala opened it carefully. She unrolled the letter and began to read. As she read, her face grew hard with anger. "What a proud, arrogant king," she said to herself. "He commands me. Even if he begged, I would never return Jamar. Never." She tore the letter into pieces, but she didn't know that Jamar had been watching her the whole time. Queen Nala turned around and was surprised to see Jamar standing there. She realized that it was about time she told him about the secret of his birth. Queen Nala took a deep breath. She swam closer to him, placing her hands gently on his shoulders. 16 years ago, I assisted your birth mother in giving birth to you, but she gave you away to me. That is how you came to be a part of our family. I do not know the identity of your birth mother, but I have received a letter from the king of the humans above, and he claims you are his son." Jamar's eyes widened in shock. "But that can't be true. I've never even met him. How can I be his son?" Queen Nala's expression softened. "I brought you here and raised you as my own. Since then, you have been part of this family." Jamar's heart felt heavy. "If I'm his son, why did my real parents not want me?" Queen Nala's heart ached for him. She gently stroked his cheek. "I don't know why they left you," she said, "but I know this. You are loved here. You are my son. You are part of this family, and nothing will change that." Jamar stood in silence. He felt thankful for the life he had here. Just then, Princess Kai swam into the cove after overhearing their conversation and hugged Jamar tightly. "You are my brother, and you are not leaving," she cried, looking very worried. Jamar hugged her and his mother with a smile on his face. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home," he said firmly. Queen Nala watched them, her eyes full of love and also much more determined to fight to keep her son, Jamar. She resolved to protect him with her life. But deep down, Queen Nala felt uneasy. She knew the king would not stop. Queen Nala and her mermaids prepared themselves deep in the water for whatever storm is to come. Finally, the moment came. The king marched to the river full of anger, and his men followed behind him, ready for war. The river rippled, and Queen Nala rose from the water. Her presence was strong and commanding like the river itself. The king's men and Queen Nala's warriors watched in complete silence. The tension in the air was thick. King Asha spoke first, his voice full of rage. "This is your last chance," he said. "Return my son to me, or I will destroy you and your entire kingdom." Queen Nala's eyes narrowed, but she stayed calm. "You arrogant king," she said, her voice steady. "Is this how you thank me for taking in the child you claim as yours? Without me, he would not even be alive." King Asha shouted, "Give me my son, or I will take him by force." And then he drew his sword. Queen Nala emerged from the water. Her tail shimmered and transformed into human legs. She reached for her own sword, long and glowing like the waves. Both the humans and mermaids held their breath as they watched. The mermaids were scared. They watched from the water as Queen Nala fought the king. They knew the king was very strong, and they were afraid she might lose. Although the mermaids had magic, the king's men also practiced dark magic, which made them even more powerful. Queen Nala and the king fought hard. At first, the king was winning. His hits were strong and fast, pushing Queen Nala back. But then something strange happened. Queen Nala started to fight back stronger than before. Her strikes became faster, her movements sharper. She was getting stronger with every swing of her sword because of Prince Jamar. The power meant for the king's land was now helping her. She pushed the king back until her blade pointed straight at his neck. The king froze, breathing hard, but instead of finishing him, Queen Nala stepped back. She lowered her sword. "I didn't come here to end the life of anyone," she said firmly. "I came to protect my people in the river." The king's face turned, red with anger. He stepped back, his pride hurt, but then, in one swift motion, he slashed the neck of Queen Nala, who had already let her guard down. Just then, Jamar appeared from the river. His body was glowing bright. His tail began to change as he stepped onto the riverbank, turning into human legs. He looked powerful, and his glow lit up the entire area. Jamar's voice was calm but firm. "This fight ends now," he said. The ground trembled as he walked forward. "I can't believe someone like you was my father," he told King Asha. "Thank the gods I didn't grow up in your hands. Your pride is what will destroy you." King Asha growled, "I have lived 3 times. Longer than you. My wisdom is beyond your understanding. Join me now, and together we will destroy these mermaids." Jamar's expression grew sharp. "Not all advice from an old man is good," he said firmly. "Even fools grow old, and we must all learn to make our own choices." The king's body shook with rage. "So you want to fight your own father?" he bellowed. Jamar shook his head. "I am not the one fighting, my mother is." Jamar turned and walked toward Queen Nala, who was lying injured on the ground, almost dead. He knelt beside her and placed his glowing hands over her wounds. A bright light spread from his fingers, and the queen's injuries healed. Queen Nala stood up taller and stronger than before. Her eyes glowed with renewed power. The king's face twisted in disbelief. He raised his sword and charged at Queen Nala again, but this time she was faster and stronger. She dodged his attacks with ease and struck back with sharp, precise blows. The king, desperate, turned to his men and commanded them to take the lives of all mermaids and poison the river. But something unexpected happened. The king's men lowered their swords and bowed to Prince Jamar. Queen Nala stood over the defeated king, her sword raised high. The entire battlefield went silent as the king looked up at her, fear in his eyes for the first time, his pride shattered. His voice was shaky as he said, "I am sorry." The silence deepened as Queen Nala froze, her sword still pointed at his neck. She sighed and stepped back, lowering her blade. "Now that's it," she said. "Did those words take anything from you?" "I am sorry." "It's so simple. You were lucky my blade didn't move too fast." She held out her hand and helped the king to his feet. King Asha stood there silent and ashamed. He looked at his men, his own soldiers, and saw how they had turned against him. He thought about his actions, his pride, and how much it had cost him. The king turned to everyone and bowed his head deeply. "I am sorry," he said again, his voice soft but sincere. Queen Nala nodded, and Prince Jamar stepped forward. "I forgive you," Jamar said, "but let this be a lesson. Kindness, not pride, is what makes a true leader." Prince Jamar followed the king back to the palace. Queen Zuri and Prince Ayani were released, and when she stepped out and saw her son, tears filled her eyes. She fell to her knees, begging him, "Please forgive me, my son. I was so afraid. I made a terrible mistake." Prince Jamar gently lifted her to her feet and smiled warmly. He assured her that he had already forgiven her, as her choices had, actually given him the best moments of his life. King Asha also called his cabinet together and apologized to them, making promises to change for the better. Queen Nala returned to her kingdom with her mermaids, but she and King Asha agreed to keep a peace between the land and the sea. Prince Ayani, who had been adopted into the royal family, was not sent back. He stayed in the palace as a part of the family. The two princes, Jamar and Ayani, grew close as brothers. King Asha ruled with kindness, wisdom, and fairness, and became known as one of the kindest rulers in the history of the land. Prince Jamar often visited the human kingdom, where he was always loved and celebrated. As King Asha grew old, he passed his crown to Prince Jamar, who became the greatest leader of both land and sea, respected by all. And the two kingdoms flourished under his rule, with his brother Prince Ayani and his sister Princess Kai firmly by his side. The moral lesson is that pride always comes before a fall, and could cost us a whole lot in the process. True strength lies in admitting mistakes, seeking forgiveness, and showing true repentance. What other lessons did you pick out from this story? Please comment below. If you love this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are.